Hello,
Hi,
I'm Zach,
I'm Braxton.
and we are
From Old to New.
And today we're going to We're going to give our review of probably our favorite film of the year,
Spider-Man No Way Home.
Now, if you want to see our initial reaction to this, we made a small short of us immediately coming out of the theater seeing it, and you could tell from our reaction, it is amazing.
Yes, you can go ahead and click on our channel if you hadn't watched that video and watch it on there. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button.
And now here we're going to give you our full spoiler review of the video. However, now we should warn you, this doesn't just contain spoilers to Spider-Man No Way Home, but it also contains spoilers to other Spider-Man films and other Marvel projects, specifically the Netflix and Disney TV shows. So if you're not caught up on those, fair warning, this may contain spoilers for that.
Yes.
And let's get started.
Alright.
Alright, so immediately starting off, we're going back to where Peter Parker's identity has now been revealed by Mysterio.
Yes, this takes place the second after Far From Home ends.
Yes, and obviously people are already scrounging up, getting him paparazzi, getting him and MJ's business. So he tries to get back to his apartment, but now that he's famous, everybody knows where he lives. Eventually, he gets arrested, although not officially charged with anything. Although he may be charged, and everyone's interrogated.
And he has to get a lawyer.
And when we figured out, we knew eventually he'd have to get a lawyer. So there were two options. One, Matt Murdock, Daredevil, obviously, or
they were going to introduce She-Hulk in this because she's getting her own TV show on
and
Disney+.
Considering her connection to the Avengers, it would make sense for her. But amazingly, and I'm glad, my first prediction was true. Daredevil.
Yes, Daredevil.
Not only Daredevil, Charlie Cox's Daredevil from the Netflix TV show Daredevil, which was amazing.
Yes, he makes a quick cameo in this, and this one was an awesome movie theater experience. For seeing it for the first time, the night it came out, everybody was cheering. Every other scene there were people cheering, and it was awesome.
I stood up out of my seat 2 or 3 more times, and I felt like my voice was so sore from screaming so much, cheering, and so even though Peter figured out his legal troubles, like many other celebrities, even after that happens, they're still remembered just for that. So there are people and I thought that was a great thing the film pointed out. It showed the negative aspects of things, now that everyone knows where he is, he can't do normal things anymore.
Yeah, he can't do normal things anymore. He goes to school and everybody's just watching him, and he's having to be escorted into school, and his teachers are feel free, if you want to crawl on the walls and stuff, or swing through the halls,
but
and
then
stuff like that.
They've also got a division of you have people who are grateful for Spider-Man, but there are also those who still believe Mysterio was just a good,
there's people that think that Mysterio was the good guy, and there's a part where during Daredevil's cameo, somebody throws a brick through his window and he catches it, and it says Mysterio was right.
Yeah. Which was also kind of a nice Easter egg to Hawkeye television series, where people were like, Thanos was right.
Yeah.
And also, pointing out about Hawkeye, I knew eventually they had to bring in Charlie Cox's Daredevil because of how they introduced Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin back into there. And I thought it was a great thing, because who better to play Daredevil and Kingpin than people who have experience playing them?
Yeah.
And so
I think it was a good idea not recasting them.
Yeah. So, Peter Parker's also, since he's still in high school, he's also trying to figure out his life in college, and because of his connection to, because of him being Spider-Man, he and his friends are denied application to their dream school, MIT.
Yeah, they send in their applications, and Peter gets denied because he is Spider-Man, and his friends get denied because they're connected to Spider-Man.
And since his actions were considered vigilantism, they were considered accomplices to him.
Yeah.
And so Peter then decides, there's nothing else. The only thing left I can do is to go see Doctor Strange
and make people forget that I'm Spider-Man.
And I'm glad that they also point something out. Since Doctor Strange disappeared, Wong has now taken over as the Sorcerer Supreme, which I thought was a great detail, because we couldn't just immediately consider, oh, Steve, you're back, here's your job back. It's you've been away for 5 years, someone else had to take over.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that he's respecting that at least.
Yeah, that's a good connection from this movie to Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame.
Yeah. And like immediately, like originally Peter didn't want to erase people's memory. He just wanted like, could you just go back in time and fix this?
And they say like, no, we can't do that. We don't have the time stone anymore.
Plus, they probably like got rid of their time travel technology.
Yeah.
Like, or they're just saving that like in the case of an emergency kind of stuff. So Strange decides to help him out, begins to cast a spell, but Peter wants to make some changes to it so that only MJ, Ned, his Aunt May, and Happy will still remember him as Spider-Man. But that spell ends up going awry
and unleashes the multiverse.
And like while Peter's like out, like swinging around as Spider-Man, trying to convince like them to let him back in MIT, we get introduced to probably the greatest Spider-Man villain of all time, Doc Ock.
Yes, Doc Ock shows, and this whole bridge sequence is amazing because it starts off, he's in his regular Peter Parker clothes and he's talking to the lady in MIT, and like they just see people running and screaming and they don't know why, and then the Doc Ock tentacles come up from the bridge and stuff like that, and he has his Iron Spider suit.
And I will say this though, even though like we knew he was showing up at that scene from what we see in the trailer, people still cheered for him because they were just so happy to see him on screen again.
Yes.
And I will also say this. When I first saw the trailer, I thought that the suit that he was wearing, like Peter Parker's like, regular clothes, looked exactly like the kind of suit that Tobey Maguire would wear in his like Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a good Easter egg. And like when we see like Doc Ock show up, he's like talking to Peter like, what have you done with my machine?
Yes, he brings up the machine that he makes at the end of Spider-Man 2.
And the classic line, the power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Yeah, he brings that up, and eventually, they're fighting, and he gets Doc Ock captures Peter, and it brings up that point in the trailer where he says, "You're not Peter Parker," and then he says, "I'm so confused right now."
And so eventually, he absorbs some of Peter's nanotech from his suit, but Peter discovers that because he now pairs his suit to them, he can control Doc Ock.
Yes.
And when he's like, he tries to like talk to Doc Ock, now will you please explain to me what is going on? Eventually we see a pumpkin bomb, and immediately we are introduced to
the Green Goblin.
Okay, yeah. And I just feel like, Green Goblin showing up, we're all just immediately taken back, and like he's just like, wait, Osborn? Like, shocking because, like, I thought you died. Like, he died, like, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so, like, he's about to fight him, but then he's portaled by Stephen Strange.
Yeah.
And kept in a dungeon where we see he's already captured Kurt Connor's lizard.
Yeah. So, now they're on this mission that they have to go find all the people that do not belong in their universe and capture them all.
And also, I was to point out, like, Peter's, like, obviously shocked, like, holy crap, wait, the multiverse is real?
Yeah.
And, like, because, like, in the original, when he first met Mysterio, he thought, oh, cool, the multiverse exists. But then when, like, Mysterio was revealed to be a fraud, he's like, maybe it's not real. But then he's like, oh, God, it is real.
Yeah, that's a conflicting thing in the MCU. It's like, one minute the multiverse is real, and the next that it's not. They go back and forth. But then, at the end of, I think, Loki, they unleashed the actual multiverse. And
and so now Peter's teamed up with MJ and Ned to like hunt down the other villains, and so eventually they track down one, and it turns out to be Electro.
Yes, Electro.
Jamie Foxx's Electro.
Oh, and Peter has a new suit.
While we saw in the trailers, like we thought it was like, oh, it's a new. Like, some people thought it was like, oh, it's a magical suit enhanced by Doctor Strange. It turns out it's just, like, his suit turned inside out.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, like, I thought it was, like, a cool thing, like, to show that.
Yeah.
Like, and so, like, he's facing off against Electro, and he's about to be taken out by Electro until he's saved by Flint Marko, a.k.a. Sandman.
So, Sandman he kind of starts out a little bit of a hero, but then he realizes that he's not helping Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
So he's
He's
like
helping Tom Holland. So he's like, okay, I'm a villain again.
Well, I kind of feel like he had a right to be distrusting. Like, you know, he grew up in a prison as a criminal. So in that kind of situation, you're grown to be like distrustful towards people you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know who you can trust. I mean, it's a stressful situation. Like, you're telling me I'm in an I'm in another universe, and I'm supposed to trust you? Like, you gotta like learn who you can trust.
Yeah.
So like, he eventually captures Electro, who has gained like his physical body back.
Yeah.
And
Electro looks different in
Yes.
this one. He's not blue anymore.
Yes.
Thankfully.
they added like, you know, the classic yellow lightning from his comics. And you know, eventually like he takes them back to Doctor Strange until like he gets a call from his AMA saying like, I think one of the guys you got showed up here, and it's Norman Osborn.
Yeah.
And Norman explains like, you know, he actually points out something that we pointed out in our previous discussion, how he's not the villain. It's the Goblin personality.
Yeah. This goes back straight to his split personality aspect, where there's Norman Osborn and then there's the Green Goblin.
Yeah. Like, Norman doesn't want to act on these things, and he tries to fight it, but he has trouble controlling it. And you can also see, like, you know, he's definitely heartbroken, like, being in this universe, because in this one, Oscorp doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a home, and not only that, worst of all, his son doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So, even with that, I'm still hopeful maybe there is an Osborn out there who just, like, maybe hasn't reached notoriety yet.
Maybe.
Eventually you may see Harry Osborn. I'm hopeful, but till then we have to assume maybe he's not.
They've got plans for a whole new trilogy.
So, he may show up. So, like, AMA's, like, telling him, like, you know, you gotta help these guys. But Peter's like, no, I gotta send them back to their universe. That's where they belong.
Yeah.
And that, however, that when they get him back to the Sanctum Sanctorum, they find out, like, the truth about him. How each villain eventually dies fighting Spider-Man. Because that's where, like, they were taken from. Like...
They were taking moments from their deaths.
Yes. And so Doctor Strange arrives, about to send them back to their realities, but Peter decides he doesn't want to send these people back to their deaths.
Yeah, he's wanting to do what he thinks is the right thing by not wanting to send them back to die.
Yeah, so a fight ensues between him and Doctor Strange, where like we see a bunch, like he tries to escape, but Strange just opens portals back to him. He even tries pushing him out with astral projection, but he can't, like, you know.
Yeah, there's a whole battle sequence in this. So if you were like a huge fan of the Doctor Strange movie, you'll love this part of the movie because it's basically like a Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah, it applies, like, you know, the whole kaleidoscopic collapsing of the buildings.
Yeah, there's a train sequence where there's like 6 different trains.
Yes, and I love how they had to add a train, because it's like a perfect homage to Spider-Man 2. He's fighting another Doctor Strange, but instead of Doc Ock, he's fighting Doctor Strange, who is also mentioned in Spider-Man 2, ironically. Yeah. Yes, and so, like, you know, he eventually defeats Doctor Strange, and he traps him in the mirror dimension, and so he decides, like, you know, I'm going to help out, I'm going to try to help you guys out, and of course, and another thing I love about this movie, they add the perfect moments to, like, bring back inside jokes and memes from the old trilogies.
Yeah, and references.
Because, like, Norman's like, you know, maybe I could help. You know,
I'm something of a scientist myself.
And I just thought, like, oh, come on. Like, I just, like...
And so many people cheered during these references, too.
Because, like, everyone's like, they're like that guy, they're like Captain America, where he's like, I know that.
I understand that reference.
Yes. And so, like, you know, they take him back to, like, Happy's apartment where they keep up. And so, but he gives, like, MJ, like, you know, the device that will send them back in, like a failsafe in case it fails. And I gotta point out, I feel like this is the best version of MJ that I've seen. Because she's, like, her own independent character. I mean, all the other ones are independent characters, too. Like, Gwen Stacy, the Mary Jane. And, like, even Norman Osborn was, like, shocked when, like, wait, MJ? Mary Jane? No, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's so like, she's like, you know, I feel like she's my favorite of them.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, he starts working on the cures for each of them individually using some Stark tech that Happy had left over.
Yeah.
So eventually they find a cure. They, like, rebuild the inhibitor chip for Doc Ock, giving him back full control of his arms.
Yes.
And it also kind of brings back another thing. Like Doc Ock himself was kind of going through a sense of split personality because.
Yeah, because the arms are still kind of controlling him a little bit throughout the first half of the movie, and then they build a new inhibitor chip and they put it on him, and now he's got control of it again.
I also kind of love they added this little Easter egg. Like when Doc Ock is like under the control of the arms, his glasses are like full dark. But after he got back control, they became clearer, like just regular scientist glasses. So I thought that was a cool. However, eventually, Peter starts noticing something with his spidey sense. He just senses like imminent danger. He can't determine what it is yet until he discovers it's Green Goblin.
Yeah.
And Green Goblin's personality comes out. And he kind of brings out, like, that kind of Joker kind of energy.
Yes,
like,
there's a big fight that ensues between Peter Parker and Green Goblin.
And it kind of proves that, Green Goblin is not just Green Goblin with his equipment. He can put up a fight. Because he was given super soldier kind of serum.
Yeah.
He can get hit, punched in the face over and over again, and still got that kind of grin and laugh.
Yeah, that part was really, really creepy. And it just shows how good of an actor and
Willem Dafoe is.
Yeah, William Dafoe.
Yeah, and then so eventually it ends with he attacks Peter Parker and Aunt May, and he escapes, and he dons on a new kind of suit.
Yeah, he gets a new suit because his old suit gets destroyed.
Like his mask is destroyed, but he adds like a purple hood, adding some more comic book accurate stuff to it. And then Peter Parker's like, he feels defeated. He's like, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. But his Aunt May then gives him the classic, with
great power comes great responsibility.
And however, this is also sad because, spoiler alert, we get to see Peter's Uncle Ben moment, but this time
it's with Aunt May.
Yes, and I just feel like this was the moment he truly became Spider-Man.
Yeah, this scene was actually kind of surprising because we've all seen Uncle Ben die twice, and then when they finally are just like, nope, we're gonna kill Aunt May, we were like, what?
Yeah, it's like. So we just assume, like most fans assume, like us, we just assume the with great power comes great responsibility thing happened like off screen.
Yeah, it had already happened.
But my guess is this could have just been a scenario where Peter may have gotten his powers, still trying to figure them out, and whether he was just out or at school one day, Uncle Ben was attacked by a mugger and killed.
Yeah, killed.
So,
or there's still the possibility that maybe in this universe he doesn't have an Uncle Ben.
I'm pretty sure he does, because in Spider-Man Far From Home, we see a suitcase with his initials on it. So I'm pretty sure he still exists. But Spider-Man's just defeated, so he goes off to just be alone for a while, and Ned and MJ considering pushing the button, sending him back. But then Ned notices that he can use Doctor Strange's sling ring, and he's like, I just wish we could see Peter. And then we open a portal to Peter Parker. But then there's just a collective gasp from the crowd.
Yes.
And he starts, Peter, come on! So he runs over.
Well, at first you kind of see Peter, and he kind of looks confused a little bit. He's like, wait, what is that? And they're like, Peter, come on. And he runs, and he jumps through, and it's Andrew Garfield.
I mean, there were so many leaks about him showing up in this, but we were just so happy, yes!
Yes, the whole theater's cheering at this moment.
We were basically just that Shia LaBeouf meme of him clapping, just
yeah.
Yes.
And so Andrew shows up, and they don't know who he is, and they're like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Peter Parker, I'm Spider-Man.
On my Earth, but I don't know how, but I just ended up here. Because, the spell was just, it brought in people who knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man, so of course it had to be Peter Parker, since he knew he was Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it also shows you how smart Andrew's Peter was, too, how all of them are, because he starts talking about string theory and
matter displacement, all that. He's like,
he's like, it's all real.
I knew it.
It kind of shows how he's still a nerd.
Even though, he was portrayed as, the cool, edgy Peter Parker.
Yeah. And
so, they're just like, how do we know you're actually Peter Parker? It's like, I am literally hanging from a wall, and I'm
not
gonna
crawl around.
No.
I'm not gonna do it. Crawl around.
Eventually he does do it, and they're just like, you know, we'll just say it for now. And they're like, okay, I guess we do it again until we find the real one. And then at that moment, people are just like,
yes, when they say find the real one, everybody gets excited.
Because, and then like Ned opens a portal, and in comes just the real Peter Parker to us, the OG Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire.
Now, when Andrew Garfield shows up, he's in a Spider-Man suit, and he's, you know, he unmasks himself, and they're like,
oh, it's just some random guy.
yeah, when Tobey Maguire showed up, because he's not wearing a Spider-Man suit, and they're like, well, why aren't you wearing your Spider-Man suit? And he's like, I kind of don't go around advertising it.
Yeah, and I also, like, because I pointed this out, I read, like, a couple of YouTube comments that people have made, and some people point out, like, you know, like, Tobey Maguire was the best Peter Parker, Andrew was the best Spider-Man, but Tom Holland was the one that best encapsulated both of them. And I thought that was a really cool connection because we see Andrew Garfield introduced in a Spider-Man suit, Tobey Maguire just in his regular civilian clothes.
Yeah.
So it was like a nice little...
And there's also a quick little Spider-Man fight-off kind of thing between Tobey and Andrew because Tobey, like, looks at him and he's like, wait, he's not your friend. And then they just kind of do some flips and shoot webs at each other.
And, of course, Tobey gets the upper hand.
Yes.
And, like, so they're like, you know, I think we gotta find your friend because he's in a dark place right now. He needs help.
Yeah.
And so they find him, and he's, like, obviously shocked, like, wait, these guys are me?
Yeah. And so they all talk about their past experiences, about how Uncle Ben dies.
And, like, Tobey's like, you know, I hunted down the man who killed my uncle, and it didn't help when I killed him. And then Andrew talks about, like, how he lost Gwen Stacy, and we get some added background to, like, that story, because it talks about, like, you know, after that, I got better, and I stopped pulling my punches.
Yes, and they have been speculating rumors about The Amazing Spider-Man 3, how they may be making it, and I really hope they explore that aspect of it.
And I actually have a theory about that. Now, we've seen, like, from previous, if you haven't seen the Morbius trailer, there's a scene where he walks back by a mural of Spider-Man that says murder on it, and most people just assumed maybe we're in MCU universe. But my theory is, since Andrew has claimed that he has killed people before, maybe this is, like, Venom's universe and Morbius' universe are Andrew's universe. They just haven't interacted yet.
Yeah.
And, like, people in New York are probably, like, divided on Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Or as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Eventually, like, you know, all the Spider-Mans come together and decide we need to work together and help them. And and then, like, as that happens, I hear the Danny Elfman theme from the first Spider-Man. I'm like,
yes. So there's a scene where they're all working in this lab and they're all working together, and then MJ says Peter, and then they all look up.
No, I thought it was Ned that said that.
It was Ned.
He's like, Peter?
One of them.
Yes. No, Peter. We're all Peter.
Yeah, and they quickly do the pointing Spider-Man meme.
Yes. And also Ned, so he's asking about, like, you know, so do you have a best friend in your universe? I did. What happened to him? He died in my arms.
Oh.
After he tried to kill me.
Oh.
And then, like, you know, I felt like when Ned heard that, like, the next thing you know, he's telling, like, so, and then he's like, I promise I won't become a supervillain and try to kill you. I feel like that's, like, he's a true blue friend. You just, you got to tell him that immediately. Okay. And then, like, you know, okay, let's go. So, like, they build the cures for each of the villains, and, like, so do you have your shield with you? I'm like, and even if you just see a speck of it, people are like, yes!
Yes.
And then they're like, oh, here you guys go. Wait, what are these? Oh, web shoot, my web fluids, why? And Tobey, like, shows off his organic webs.
Yeah.
And they're just shocked, like,
and they're
what the hell? How on earth?
They're just blown away because they had to make their own web shooters, and he didn't have to do anything.
And then after that, they like lead them to they try to draw them in at the Statue of Liberty to, like, get people away from like, you know, the population, and out comes probably my favorite scene from the whole movie, just them just talking, interacting.
And they're like, and Andrew's like, so you have, like, web blood, and Tobey's like, well, I don't really know what it is.
And, like, they're basically just the fans, like, you know, so wait, let me ask you, does it come out of your wrist or does it come out anywhere else? And, like, they're talking, like, have you ever had web blocks before? That happens to me. So, like, yes, I did. And he's like, why? Existential crisis stuff.
Yeah.
And they just talk about, like, what are some of the coolest villains you guys have faced? I fought an alien with black goo once.
Yeah.
And it's like...
And Andrew's like, oh man, I'm not cool. I fought a dude in a rhinoceros suit.
And he's like, man, I want to fight an alien. Come on. And like, I feel like that was another great thing. Andrew basically just lives and breathes middle child energy. Because like, man, I've always wanted brothers. He's also feel like, he's like, I'm lame compared to you guys.
And Toby walks in and he's like, you're not lame. You're
You
amazing.
are amazing. Yes,
Yes.
you are. Like, self-talk, dude.
Yeah.
And then eventually Electro, Sandman, and Lizard show up and begin fighting them.
Yes.
Things are not going well at first because, like, they're not working together.
Yeah, they're not working together. And then because they don't know how to work, the other Spider-Man don't know how to work in a team. And then Tom Holland says, I know a little bit about working in a team. I was in the Avengers.
He's
and
like,
then Toby says, the Avengers?
That's so cool. What is that?
Yeah. At first when he said the Avengers, you kind of think that they might exist in his universe. And then he said, what is that? And you're like, oh.
He's like, so I'm guessing, like, they may have a Doctor Strange in Toby's universe, but as of then, Spider-Man's the only hero.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so, like, they decide, like, okay, we gotta work together, work one by one, get them in. And then, like, we gotta also get Peter 1, Peter 2.
Peter 3.
Yeah, like, also, again, they keep making jokes that Andrew was, like, the worst Spider-Man.
Yes, it's it's very repetitive.
Yeah, but I also, like, I love how, like, they didn't, like, make joke. They didn't say, like, oh, we're not the best. Like, we're not one of us is, like, the worst Spider-Man. It's just all three Spider-Men working together.
Yeah. Showing
what they each brought to their, like, franchise. And I thought that was an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, they go in on a full-in swing sequence, start taking out villains, and finally confirm that there was some edited footage from the trailers. People, like, saw, like, there was, like, a trailer, part of the trailer, like, the Lizard had just got his head knocked back.
And it shows that, I think it was Toby that kicked him?
Most people assumed it was Andrew.
Yeah.
And so, like, they start taking out their villains one by one. They, like, cure Flint Marko. They end up curing Dr. Connors. But then I feel like they also, like, have trouble taking out Electro. But then Doc Ock shows up and helps them out.
Yeah, and Toby says the power of the sun in the palm of your hand and stuff like that. And they have a little, like, conversation where Doc Ock's like, I'm glad to see you. It's good to see you.
Yeah. And then, like, Andrew, like, finally has a conversation with Electro, and, like, in that scene, you kind of get to the heart of why Electro became a villain. Like, all his life, he felt like he was a nobody, and that the only way he could be somebody was by being a villain.
And Andrew was like, you were never a nobody, and, and then they are talking back and forth, and then...
He's like, I mean, you got that cool suit, you're from Queens, I just thought you were going to be black. He's like,
and then they make a quick, subtle hint by saying that there may be a black Spider-Man, or there's got to be a black Spider-Man.
And all the fans were like, we know who you're talking about.
Miles Morales.
Yes. And eventually, MJ and Ned get Doctor Strange out of the mirror dimension, and, like, he, like, figures this has got to stop, we got to send him back now.
Yeah.
But then Green Goblin shows up, and Toby's just like, oh my god, no, not him.
Yeah. And he takes the little box that they use to send them back to the dimension that they're from.
Eventually they get it back, but Goblin used a couple of tricks up his sleeve and hit a pumpkin bomb in there.
Yeah.
Blowing up the Statue of Liberty and releasing the spell, causing MJ to fall. And I have to say, this scene gave me chills. And
this was total redemption moment right here, because Tom Holland leaps for MJ, but then you see Andrew and he's like, no, and he jumps out after, and then Green Goblin's glider takes out Tom Holland.
But he gets her.
Yeah, and Andrew Garfield gets her.
In that moment, like, I'm pretty sure half the theater was just standing and cheering, me included, like, yes!
Yes, everybody was cheering for this moment, because it was almost kind of like redemption. And so when they land, Andrew's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah. And Zendaya's like, yeah. And then she goes, are you okay? And he's crying.
He's like,
yeah. And he's like, yeah, I'm okay.
He's like happy that he got to save someone.
Yeah.
And I predicted this would happen. I just figured this is how they introduce Andrew.
Yeah.
I thought he would swing in and save MJ, and that's how we get him. But I think that was a good point. I'm kind of glad that they didn't do that because we got to meet them head on.
Yeah.
And then, like, after that, Tom Holland's Peter goes into a full fight with the Green Goblin and gets the upper hand. He's about to kill him.
Yes, Tom Holland is very mad at this point.
Yes.
And he's about to kill him when
Tobey Maguire, like, comes in and stops him, grabbing the glider, not wanting him to become like them.
Yeah.
And I thought it was amazing how he ended up saving Green Goblin from the glider that killed him in the
original one.
Yeah. But while his back is turned, Goblin stabs him in the back.
Yeah.
When that happened, I was like, no, you cannot kill him.
Yes, everybody was totally shocked when that happened.
Like, and then, like, so Peter then, instead of killing Green Goblin, he gets the cure and cures him.
Yes.
And now, like, after curing Green Goblin, they go to check on Toby. He's fine. He's just like...
They're like, are you okay? Are you okay? And he was like, yeah, I've been stabbed before.
He's like, what? And then he's like, oh my god, am I dying or is that really happening? No, you're fine. And, like, this, all, like, reality is breaking up around him. You see, like, etches of other Spider-Man villains. Like, you see, one side you see Rhino, the other one you see Scorpion.
Yeah.
And so Peter then decides, like, is there any way to stop it? It's like, no, they're all here because they know you're Spider-Man. He's like, then make everyone forget me. Like, so instead of, like, making people forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, they're just gonna make everyone forget that
Peter Parker ever existed.
Yes, and obviously Strange is just heartbroken about this, but he decides to go through with it.
Yeah.
And that shows, like, Peter's now taking the words to heart. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And
so
he goes to say goodbye to Andrew and Toby.
He says goodbye to them, and they disappear. And then he goes to find MJ and Ned, and he has to tell them that they're gonna forget me.
He's like, I'll come find you guys, I promise. After that, all the villains disappear. We say goodbye to Toby and Andrew. For now, because
Tobey Maguire has mentioned that if he did come back, he'd come back for more than one movie.
Yeah, and people are just, after seeing Andrew Garfield in this film, they're asking for more.
Yeah, they're asking for Amazing Spider-Man 3, so cross your fingers.
Yes. And so, after that, things have gone back to normal. J. Jonah Jameson's still reporting Spider-Man, but they just reporting him as a menace, not as Peter Parker. Peter then, he tries to go find Ned and MJ and tell them who he is, but after seeing, they've gone to their dream college, and also seeing that MJ, her injuries from the battle, he decides that he's going to, from now, keep his identity a secret to protect them.
Yeah.
And I really hope that eventually they remember him, because I don't want him to lose everybody.
Yeah.
And so Peter then decides he's going to go get a new life, and he gets his own apartment. And I have to admit, they missed out on the perfect reference moment.
Yeah, because he gets a new apartment, and we were both sitting in the theater really hoping Mr. Dickovich from Spider-Man 2 and 3 would show up and say rent.
Or just at the very moment, just have in the background, you bid me rent? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the perfect, and it was amazing. It was like the apartment is almost exactly like Tobey Maguire's.
Yeah, but I mean, you can also understand they probably couldn't get the actor, or, they probably didn't think about it.
Yeah. And so now Peter Parker's he's studying, he got his own apartment, studying for a GED to get a job.
Yeah. And this is when we see that he gets a new Spider-Man suit that is a mixture of both Tobey's and Andrew's, and it's a bit more comic accurate.
Yes, it's very comic accurate. I'm glad that they kind of brought.
Yeah.
I feel like once I see it in theaters, I feel like this might be my favorite suit because it's so good. I mean, I love this Stark suit.
This suit looks really amazing.
Because it's home. It goes home with Spider-Man. He's got to make his own suit.
Yeah.
Because it's you got front Tobey Maguire, back design matching Andrew Garfield's, but he's also kept the Spider-Man eyes.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that he's keeping those. And so he then goes swinging on into the night, taking a page out of Tobey Maguire's book, listening to police scanners.
Yeah.
And he's off being Spider-Man again.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that we may see Tom Holland's Peter Parker again, because news have circulated that he may or may not continue as Spider-Man.
Yeah.
If he doesn't, I feel like this is a great chapter for him to leave off on, and I'll miss him. But if he does, great. Can't wait to see more of it.
Yeah.
And eventually the movie ends. We get into post-credit scenes where we see Tom Hardy's Venom, which we saw
in a bar.
Yeah, like
And
he's just asking like, okay, so wait, back this up. There was a man in a tin suit, a big green angry guy, and a big purple alien who wanted stones. It's like,
yeah, he's trying to make sense of all the MCU because he's just entered it.
and he's like all the way in Mexico.
Yeah.
He's like, and so like he's like, maybe I should go find this Peter Parker. But then it's like, oh man, we just got here. No.
Yeah. So he ends up leaving the MCU, but he accidentally leaves behind a little bit of the Venom symbiote.
And hopefully they may bring that storyline back for future projects. I'm hopeful.
Hopeful, but we'll never know.
And then after that, we get a post-credit teaser for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Which,
now,
if you haven't seen, it's on YouTube now.
yes. So that is our review for Spider-Man No Way Home. I will have to say, I was like at a moment for no words because it was so amazing. But when I got out of theaters, I can only say one thing: I love this movie 3000.
Yes, this movie is amazing. So
if you haven't seen it, you have to see this.
This movie is really great.
It's, in our opinion, best movie of the year, and I think one of my favorite movies of all time.
It's pretty good. I definitely would say it's one of the best.
I'm gonna give it 11 out of 10.
Yeah, 11 out of 10.
So
that was our review for Spider-Man No Way Home, and we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Peace.
Peace.